Okay, so today we're going to try doing something a little bit different here. We're going to show you how to build, or how I went about building a horizontal hive from Dr. Leo Sharashkin's website, www.horizontalhive.com. So there are a lot of pieces and parts to this, and I'm not showing you how I put all the pieces. I'm just going to show you kind of a high speed, maybe 4 times the speed of how I went about putting this hive together. So obviously there was a lot of prep work to get to this point, and the entire build, once I had all the parts cut, so this build you're going to watch took about an hour. It took. So we're caught up here now that we're basically building the bottom, and we've got it upside down, and now we're putting on what will eventually be the bottom of the hive. And we've just filled the bottom part with some wool, some from our sheep and some from sheep that people donated to us. Basically the wool makes a very good insulator for the winter, and with these horizontal hives as opposed to the Langstroth, we're able to insulate them once up front and then not have to worry about going back in the wintertime to winterize them. So our sheep are a Katahdin sheep, a hair sheep, so the wool that comes from them isn't very good for fiber, as far as if you're going to use it for spinning yarn or whatever, so this is a perfect application for it. So at this stage, essentially this whole hive is essentially a box inside of another box with the space in between insulated with wool. So I'm basically putting this end wall on now, and I'm just lining everything up to be flush and stapling. It's really important that these staples don't go through into the inside, because that's where the bees will be, and any of your Layens frames will be inside there as well, so you don't want any staples sticking out through that any of those are going to catch on, or that the bees will end up being in contact with. So at this stage I've pretty much got the inner box completed, and you'll notice that the left hand side and the end wall that I'm stapling on right now, that there is a slight difference in height. And that difference in height is essentially where the Langstroth, where the Layens frames will sit inside the box. So this piece I'm putting on now is actually going to be the piece that the entrance holes that the bees will go into, is going to be drilled through. You'll see that later on. And now I'm just basically going to go ahead and build the support that goes around the upper of the hive. So it's a little bit of effort with one person, because obviously Jill is doing the videoing as I'm putting this together. So this job would definitely go a little bit better if you had 2 people. And again, the stapler, the air stapler, makes this job go a lot quicker. You also see that I am using glue quite liberally throughout this build. And that's just so that after, those little staples don't hold a great deal, but added with the glue in there, then it'd be more than sufficient. So the plans for this hive, I took them right off of Dr. Leo's site, and he is very good about sharing all these plans for free. This part, you'll notice that I've got the air nailer angled a fair bit, and again, it's because this lip is a little bit lower, and you can kind of see that, and again, that's where the Layens frames will hang on the side there. So just again going around here, fitting up this upper frame, and essentially this upper frame, the lower frame, are where the outside box will go on. So once I get this last piece on here, I got a couple more supports to put on after that, and they're basically the supports above the piece of wood where the entrance hole is going to be, and the back of the hive, essentially. And the side walls, because they're long, they're 3 feet long, they're going to just give a little bit of rigidity to it. So here in the ends, I'm I've got a countersink drill bit there, so that when I put the screws in, I can, one, get them in deep enough so that they will take hold of the piece that I'm screwing to, and also because your next sheet of plywood is going to go on over top of it, it's to make sure that they are recessed a little bit so the plywood can go on flush, and also pre-drilling them so they don't, so the ends don't split, because all this wood, if you don't pre-drill it, it will split. So here I had just a little bit longer than I wanted on the ends. It was just showing proud by about 1/8 of an inch, so I just kind of squared that off of the saw. Now Dr. Leo's plans, at first when I looked at them, I thought it was a little bit weird because a lot of his plans he had right down to the 32nd, and I questioned that. I didn't think it would need to be that accurate, but what I will say is his plans are very well done, and by following them right down to the 32nd, it really made the whole box go together nicely. So I would advise that you do that. The other issue I had on this project, as well as with the swarm traps that I did in a previous video, he called for a slightly different plywood than what I had available to me. Like I think on this particular one he called for 11/32 plywood, and I didn't have any of that, so I went with 3/8 plywood, which was just a little bit thicker. So I did make some minor adjustments to it, like I did add a 16th or a 32nd in a couple of places. But overall, if you can find the same size plywood that he had, then this will all go together very easy. So again here, so now we built the entire inner box, so to speak, and now I'm putting on the end cap. And again, it's important that these ones are flush on both sides, because the next pieces, the K's, are going to be going over top the end pieces to cover them. So so I found it easier to do the two end pieces first, and it does look like we're using a lot of wool here, and unfortunately when we get down to nearly the end of this, I didn't quite have enough to finish this hive, but at this stage I had already completed 2 other hives, so I'm going to have to go shear another sheep to get the last little bit that I needed. Again, like I said, the air nailer made this job a lot speedier. And I did a lot of debating about how we would do this video, because for me, I'm a very technical guy and I would enjoy watching a video like this of the actual build, but my wife, she did not think this was a video she would want to watch, which is totally appreciate. I think everyone watches content a little differently. So if anyone has any comments about whether they like this and like this high speed way we went through this, or if you don't like it, that's fine too. It'll give us some input of how we can do better in the future. So we're just kind of again fitting all this wool in here. And if you notice the floor in our workshop here, Joe and I went through about 2 hours of cleaning up before we did this video, so it's a lot cleaner than it was the last time we were doing a video over here. So here we go. We're going to put the K piece on here, and that's one of the side pieces. So now we're very nearly done the main box part of this this build, and we're just going through here and putting the final staples on. And another thing to note here is that, and I'm writing front on here because that's important, so we know when we drill the holes through that piece, and that's so that the bees can't get inside where the insulation might be. A solid piece with an 1.5-inch hole saw, slightly on an angle downward, so if any moisture did get into the entrances, that it would run back out. So here you'll see where I had said we got to the piece where we just didn't have enough to finish that last square. So I'm just temporarily putting the cover on that. Alright, so this, now we're building the cover. And the ends of the longer pieces have a rabbet joint cut into them. And again, we're using lots of glue. And the end pieces there, the U's, they have some holes through them as well. And again, they're slightly slanted downhill so that any water could run out of the of those holes. And those holes are simply just a vent hole for the top of the hive. And we're building this upside down, right now. So what will be the end pieces, or what will be the bottom of the cover, is actually what's facing up right now. So, and again, we did the same thing with these this cover, is that we did pre-drill the holes and countersunk them before we put screws in to hold those. And again, that's just a rigidity thing. So we've got that now, and we've now flipped over the frame, and we're just checking to make sure it's square before we put the cover on. And this cover is in two pieces. I was wondering initially why he built this with two pieces, but after building 3 of these, I realized that the reason he did it was because it made perfect use of the sheets of plywood. So with this project, I was able to buy 4 sheets of plywood, and that built 3 full horizontal hives. And I mean, Dr. Leo has these plans worked out. There's very little waste left afterwards. The seam down the center, you might think that might be an issue, but ultimately when we're done, and I don't show it in this video, but we are going to have a piece of flashing, 24-inch flashing, that will completely cover that outside lid, so that slant at all. So you'll notice here I'm using a hammer stapler to put these little pieces of screen over top those holes. And that's again because these holes are vents. We don't want bees or any other insects getting inside the top of that hive. But on my first cover I made, I did actually use the air stapler, but they went through, even though the staple should have been okay, because it drives them in so hard, it did end up coming a little bit proud on the outside of the cover. So use a hammer stapler with like 3/8 staples would be better. So what we're doing here is we're putting the T and the F pieces in, and that little piece of plywood that I have there is just a spacer, just meant to show us what height to mount those to. Kind of a bit of a jig. I like jigs. And then we're just screwing these around the perimeter. And what this does is allows that cover to sit up, so that the airflow coming in those vent holes will be kind of over the head space of the horizontal hive. And that's basically all we're doing here. So the last piece, we're again putting that spacer in and putting our final piece of wood in there. And we're very nearly done the cover here. So that's the cover, and here I'm getting one of my other hive boxes that I had previously built and previously drilled these holes into. Those holes are, I think on this one was 5.5 in from each edge, was the center of the 2 outside holes, and the center one I believe was 18 and 1/16, I believe, from one edge into the center hole, and they're on a 3-inch from the bottom line. So here I am. I've put 20 of the frames that we had previously built in that hive. It is a monster hive. I'm not exactly sure how much weight this will hold or how much honey it will hold, but I suspect quite a lot. So these are the little discs we had got. Bought these off of Amazon, and they arrived just in time. Literally, my daughter brought these over just as we were making this video. They had just got delivered in the mail, and this will allow us to have 3 entrances. But in the end, when this hive is up and running, it'll be like that configuration. So thanks for watching, guys, and we'll catch you on the next video. Thanks.